Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
And I am Ken.
And you may recognize our voices from the podcast Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved. But today we're here to tell you about a nonprofit organization we have created called the Florida Themis Project.
Themis is the Greek goddess of justice, if you're wondering about the name.
The Florida Themis Project aims to support loved ones and victims of unsolved crime by financially contributing to various types of investigative tools, including DNA testing.
We also help the families and loved ones of missing people by assisting with awareness campaigns, helping in ground searches, and any other assistance that we can provide to the families.
We're asking you for your help to spread the word and grow our organization so we can help as many people as possible.
So please be sure to check out our website at floridathemisproject.org for info about how you can help or donate.
We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Florida Themis Project.
Even simply sharing our post on social media is very helpful.
So thank you in advance, true crime friends, for your help and support. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I am Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Missing and Unsolved.
This is a Palmahawk Media production covering true crime,
missing people,
unsolved crime,
and cold cases.
Please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, and links to all of our social medias.
On the website, we also have a virtual tip jar, so you can leave us a tip and we'll give you a shout out on the show.
Another way to support this show is to join our Palmahawk Media Patreon.
On Patreon, you'll receive early and ad-free episodes for all of our Palmahawk Media shows. And depending on what tier you choose, bonus content and even special gifts from us might come right to you.
Yes, and you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media. There's also going to be a link in the show notes.
So, Lauren, what exactly are we going to talk about this evening? What are we discussing? I know we're going to do something a little bit different and maybe something we're going to do more often, but what exactly is this?
Yeah, so what we're doing tonight for this episode is going to be a little different. It's going to be 3 different cases from one county here in Florida. See, a lot of times we run into these unsolved cases or these missing people cases, and there's just not enough info for an entire episode. So we're going to try something new. We're going to try and do some episodes every once in a while of a few different cases in one episode from the same area. And that's what we've got for you tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about Palm Beach County. And our first case is that of missing Dori Ann Myers. Paul Taylor, a cold case homicide detective at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, told CBD 12 News on September 5th of this year, "Somebody knows something. Authorities believe that someone out there must know something about the disappearance and presumed murder of 43-year-old Dori Ann Myers."
Dori disappeared on January 10th of 2006. That evening, Dori was at a bar called the St. Lucie Inn on Old Dixie Highway in Fort Pierce, Florida. This is where she met and left with 2 men. Now, when Dori's ex-boyfriend, Joe Jones, called her around 9:30 p.m. at her home in Vero Beach, he heard voices in the background and asked who she was with. Dori told him that the men were Marines who had been wounded in Iraq and that she invited them to come over, play poker, and stay the night. Now, she stated that one man was going to sleep on the pull-out couch and the other man would sleep on the sofa. She ended their conversation in a hurry, which Joe thought this was odd because they did talk quite often. Now, Joe, of course, he was concerned about the situation, but he was a truck driver, so he was out of state at the time and unable to assist Dori. So Jones told the Palm Beach Post that Dori had a soft spot for people in the military, and if these men were trying to con her, saying that they were Marines would probably have worked.
Well, later, around midnight, a neighbor, Cindy Gomez, heard a commotion coming from Dori's home. She said she heard an argument, the car door slammed, and she saw Dori Myers' car, a black 1998 Toyota Corolla, backing out of the driveway, said Detective Taylor. But unfortunately, this neighbor just brushed it off. That was until about 3 a.m. when the neighbor heard loud pops and glass breaking. She looked outside in time to see Dori's car speeding away from the house. The house itself was engulfed in flames.
And oddly enough, at about 5 a.m., Dori's car was found on a public boat ramp in Glades County, Florida. Now, this is about 80 miles away from her home, and her car had been severely burned as well. Now, there was no sign of Dori at her house or no sign of Dori where her car was found, and she was never heard from again.
Dori was a successful hairdresser who rented a booth at a salon called Scandal's Salon in Vero Beach. Her first stop on the evening she vanished was the Hillbilly Hideaway, a tucked-back Vero Beach locals bar located near the salon where she worked. It was poker night, and Dori loved to play Texas Hold'em. Unfortunately, she got there too late, and all the tables were full, so she had a drink at the bar and then left around 8 p.m. Rick Bauman, owner of the Hillbilly Hideaway, later told the Palm Beach Post that he wished he had bumped someone off one of the tables so Dori would have stayed and played. Authorities suspected foul play pretty much right off the bat. This was mainly because both of Dori's pets, a black lab named Emily and a cat named Miss Priss, were killed in the house fire. Dori never would have left them had she intended to leave on purpose, and she definitely wouldn't have let them die in a fire. This makes me personally suspect that Dori was taken against her will and must have been unconscious or incapacitated when she was taken from the home. Now, she had just paid her car off recently, so there's no way she would have set it on fire herself.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that would definitely lead people to believe instantly that she didn't leave on her own free will.
Right.
Well, the fire damaged 30% of Dori's home, and of course the smoke got to the rest. Now, a fire department spokesman said that the fire looked like it had been set in several spots with a flammable liquid used as a propellant. Same with Dori's car, so these fires were definitely arson. Now, where the car was found, Dice Ditch, at the time, if you didn't know it was there, then you would never see it. So it's not something that you just stumble upon. Now, for some reason, they went to that specific spot, and detectives believe it was somebody who knew that area, which you kind of have to know that area.
Yeah.
You know, if you've ever been to the Okeechobee area, around the lake area there, there's a lot of places you got to really know.
The two men she was with the night of her disappearance are the prime suspects in Dori's disappearance, but who are they? Now, one witness who was at the St. Lucie Inn that night remembers that the two men came in earlier with another couple, a man with a younger woman, but they left earlier in the evening. A witness at the bar said Dori sat with the men for only about a half hour and that Dori drank only water. One of the suspects was Caucasian, 25 to 35 years old, and weighing 175 to 200 pounds. He also wore a baseball cap. The other man had a dark complexion and appeared to either be Hispanic or Native American. Sheriff's investigators got a tip that someone had seen Dori in a car with two men at a Seminole Indian reservation in Okeechobee the day after her house burned. They did place a man they found at the reservation in a lineup, but no solid leads or suspects were developed. Sketches of both men will be posted on our social media. Yeah,
we definitely got to get those faces out there. Now, there is an unidentified person, a female. It's on the NamUs website, number UP148. Partial remains were found floating in the Atlantic Ocean, not recognizable. They were found floating in the Atlantic Ocean on April 23rd, 2006. This is near Tavernier, Florida. Now, this is down in the Florida Keys. So if Dori was dumped in Lake Okeechobee, is it possible that maybe she made her way south? I mean, it's possible. It's not likely, but it is possible. It is an intercoastal waterway. So Everything flows that way. If she was put into Okeechobee, she could have floated right out because there's a canal that goes straight through.
Yep.
Now, the description, short, straight dark hair. A pierced earlobe was noted. The remains showed evidence of shark activity, estimated to be 25 to 45 years old. It does not appear Dori has been checked or ruled out of this identified person.
So that could be her.
It's a possibility.
That may be something the Themis Project could look into.
Maybe we should do that.
Well, since Dori vanished on January 10th, 2006, her credit cards, bank accounts, and passports have not been used. She was declared legally deceased in January of 2007, so the family could get her belongings passed on to her only child. But investigators and family are quick to say they are not certain she is deceased. There is still hope that Dori will be found alive.
Yeah, her sister still advocates for her every single day.
Well, let's take a quick break before our next case. Okay, and we're back. Now we're going to talk about Marjorie Christina Luna, a.k.a. Christy.
Yeah, these... I hate these. This is one of the reasons why we want to do more of this, because we need to find and locate a lot of these children that are missing.
Right.
And she's not a child today, because Marjorie Christina Luna, nicknamed Christy, now this was her nickname by her family, was last seen on the afternoon of May 27th, 1984, when she left her family's home to buy cat food from a business located only a few hundred feet away from her home in Greenacres City, Florida. Now, she purchased the cat food at approximately 3 p.m., but may have stayed at the store until as late as 6 p.m. to play video games, or it's believed that she may have headed to her friends, which was live one street over, or had gone to a nearby park after leaving the store. Now, Christy's sister realized she was missing after she woke up at 8:30 p.m. She waited 30 minutes, then went and woke up her mother, Jenny, and told her Christy was gone. Now, Christy never returned home and has never been seen again. Her bodysuit, however, was found in a swampy wooded area near her home. Now, one thing that people find to be controversial is the sister woke up at 8:30. They had been traveling for a long time, and the mother drove home. So, of course, Chrissy had been resting, but yet the mom and the sister were kind of staying awake to make this long drive. They had been coming back from somewhere, and I can't remember where, but they were coming back from a really long trip.
Yeah, and
they came back and took a nap, which is where all of this is headed. Because some people have questioned why she was sleeping at 8:30 p.m.
Right, yeah. Or waking up at 8:30 p.m.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, two neighbors, Willis and Chuck Rambo, became the first suspects in Christy's disappearance. Christy had visited their house several times, and a witness had seen Chuck give Christy money. After her disappearance, the Rambo brothers were charged with molesting Christy's 6-year-old best friend. Authorities realized the girl was being abused when they interviewed her about Christy's disappearance. Police searched the Rambo brothers' house and property after Christy went missing, but found no evidence to implicate them in her case. Both men denied any involvement in her disappearance. They each pled guilty to lewd assault in the abuse of Christy's friend and were sentenced to 10 years probation.
I know what y'all are thinking. Probation. Really? What the... Well, according to the reports that I read, the judge stated that the statements from the 6-year-old were not admissible in court. So they couldn't have been charged with anything except for what they were charged with. Yeah.
That's weird.
Disgusting.
In 1991, Willis was sentenced to 4 life terms in prison for sexually abusing his 2 stepdaughters. And Chuck now lives in Tennessee. Christy is still missing.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, the charges precede a time where you were required to register as a sex offender. So those that live in Lenoir City, Tennessee, make sure that Chuck is not your neighbor because he was never forced to register as a sex offender. So Lenoir City, be safe.
All right.
Now, in 2010, authorities did name someone else as a possible suspect in Christy's disappearance, Delbert Mosher. Now, he lived in the area at the time Christy disappeared and was arrested 3 times for child molestation, but he died in a Tennessee prison over 20 years after Christy went missing and was never officially connected to her disappearance. So nothing ever pushed. It was just someone that was brought up.
In 2019, authorities received what they described as a very credible tip, prompting them to dig up the backyard of a home that sat catty-corner to the market where Christy bought the cat food on the afternoon she vanished. The tip that led them to the yard at 265 Swain Boulevard came through social media shortly after the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office released a 19-minute documentary on the 35th anniversary of Christy's disappearance. According to the Herald Tribune, back in 1984, Guadalupe and Maria, a.k.a. Mom and Pop Martinez, lived in the single-story house and seemed to entertain a constant stream of children. They had 3 grandchildren who lived with them and a dozen more who frequently came to stay. That is in addition to the neighborhood kids who came to play in the yard, including Christy Luna. Law enforcement spent 5 days excavating the small yard where Christy once played. Sheriff's investigators worked alongside a team of forensic anthropologists from Florida Gulf Coast University, clearing vegetation outside of the home, shoveling dirt, and methodically sifting through the piles, bucket by bucket, for any trace of Christy Luna. They found large and small bones, but they were all identified as animal bones.
This all because suspicion fell on 2 of the Martinez grandsons, Ronnie and Donnie. Now, Ronnie was 17 at the time of Christy's disappearance, and Donnie was 14. Detective William Springer is asking anyone who knows a Ronnie or Donnie Dickerson to contact him immediately. Numerous public Facebook posts read that during the time. Now, Springer was busy shoveling dirt alongside with the anthropology students, and he wouldn't comment on social media postings, and Facebook users who shared those posts said they were instructed not to speak further about them. Well, at the time of the dig in their old backyard, Donnie was finishing up a 3-year prison sentence in Rayford for burglary and theft. What a stand-up guy. Now, Ronnie Dickerson was still around, but according to his wife, Tammy Dickerson, no one from the sheriff's office actually reached out to her husband or brother-in-law in regard to Christy's case.
Many have pointed out that Christy's disappearance closely resembles the disappearance of Tammy Lynn Bellinger. According to the Charlie Project, Tammy was last seen walking to Lincoln Street School in Exeter, New Hampshire on November 13, 1984. A neighbor saw her cross Court Street at approximately 8 a.m., but she never made it to school and has not been seen since. So Redditor Nemo No More posted in the subreddit Unresolved Mysteries a list of similarities between the 2 girls' disappearances. Both girls were 8 years old at the time of their abduction. Both had similar physical descriptions. They were both Caucasian, had brown hair. Tammy was 4'6" tall and weighed 70 pounds. Christy was 4'0" and weighed 60 pounds. Both girls had a physical disorder. Tammy had strabismus, which is eye misalignment, caused by an injury in early childhood. And Christy had a hearing impairment and a speech impediment. Both girls were described as shy and timid. Both were abducted on routes that they walked daily. Tammy was abducted on her walk to school, a trip she took twice a day, 5 days a week. Christy was abducted walking home from Belk's Country Store, a trip she would take 3 to 4 times a day, apparently. Both girls were abducted within 6 months of each other. Christy was abducted in May of 84, Tammy in November of 84. Now, Exeter, New Hampshire, and Greenacres, Florida are 1,486 miles apart.
That seems like a long distance.
Well, hear me out. A blue car is linked to both of the abductions. On the morning of Tammy's abduction, several witnesses reported seeing a suspicious blue car driving in the area of Lincoln Street School in Exeter, New Hampshire. One of the last times Christy was seen, she was talking to a man who was driving a faded blue car. The man was offering her money to buy sparklers from Belk's Country Store. Both girls were gone for an extended period of time before their absences were noted. So Lincoln Street Elementary School in Exeter did not have a family notification process in place at the time of Tammy's abduction. Her mother did not become aware of Tammy's absence from school until sometime between 3:30 and 4 p.m., almost 8 hours after she was last seen. In Greenacres, Florida, Christy's family had returned from an overnight trip to Jupiter, Florida on the afternoon of May 27th, and they were all tired. Her mother, an older sister, and her mother's live-in boyfriend all decided to take a nap. This is when Christy walked to the store to buy the cat food. She was last seen around that time. Her absence wasn't noted by her mother and sister until later that evening. They conducted a small neighborhood search before contacting authorities at around 10:15 p.m., almost 8 hours after Christy was last seen. Both girls were abducted 200 to 300 yards from their home, and there were no eyewitnesses to either abduction. Both girls disappeared without a trace, and it was said it was like Tammy walked into a vacuum. And authorities in Christy's case said the search was like grasping at straws. There are 5 suspects in the abduction of Christy, and one of them is actually linked to Tammy's disappearance.
Interesting.
This is Victor George Juanetti Jr. In May of 1984, Juanetti Jr. lived in Lake Worth, Florida. Lake Worth is a mere 12-mile drive from Greenacres, Florida. He had ties to the neighborhood where Christy was last seen. In November of 1984, he was employed at Brad's Auto Body in Exeter, New Hampshire. Now, Brad's is located on 69 Main Street. That is 0.3 miles from Lincoln Street Elementary School and 0.9 miles from Tammy's house. This is all circumstantial evidence that Victor Juanetti was in both areas around the same time of the abductions. But Victor owned a blue car at the time of both abductions. Juanetti was never charged in connection with either child's case, and no physical evidence connects him to the disappearances. He was sentenced to 75 years for burglary and indecent exposure in Florida in 1992. At trial, prison inmates testified that he admitted to killing Christy and Tammy. He was released from prison in 2012 and died 8 months later.
Well, Lauren, there is one more suspect that I'd like to talk about. This suspect was brought up in an interview with Detective Springer. And this man's name is William Ferris, whom was arrested in 2010 in Virginia for molesting children. Now, Ferris actually lived just a little over 100 feet behind Chrissy's home. And Ferris's home was actually on the pathway that led to Chrissy's friend's house, who she may have gone to see that day she disappeared. Now, when interviewed by detectives while he was in prison in 2010, he said that he didn't even know who Chrissy was. But when they re-interviewed him later, he stated that his wife actually did babysit Chrissy's friend and that he actually did know Chrissy because sometimes they would play together while they were there. Now, according to Ferris's wife, Ferris had made statements to her like, one day one of these girls is going to go missing. Now, he said this while the girls were actually playing in the yard. And after Chrissy disappeared, Ferris told his wife they're never going to find her. She's off of Alligator Alley. Seems a little suspicious to me.
Yeah,
now,
sure does.
Ferris worked for the city of West Palm, but then moved to Virginia less than a year after Chrissy went missing. So definitely someone to hold sort of as a high suspect in this case. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, detectives actually believed it and went and visited him in Virginia and talked to him, and this is what they come up with. So there's definitely a lot of connections in this case, and it's very sad that Chrissy is still missing. There's no sign of her, which is never a good thing. We're talking about a child. I always hate how that ends. So definitely, if anyone knows anything or knows anyone who lived in that area, please ask them to tell you the story. You can get somebody talking about it. Maybe they heard something from somebody who heard something. So, if anyone has any information about the disappearance of Christy Luna, is urged to call the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office at 561-688-4013.
All right, let's take a quick break and get into our last case. And we are back with our last case of this episode, Diane Francis.
Yeah, we actually covered this case in entirety. Was September 6th of 2021, so you can go back and listen to the whole episode.
Yeah, that's over 2 years ago. And we actually had the pleasure of interviewing Diane Francis's daughter, Sherry. So if you wanted to go back and listen to that, you can. But this case is still unsolved from Palm Beach County, and we're going to keep talking about it.
There's still not a whole lot to know. I mean, we really relied on Sherry to kind of tell us a little bit more and fill us some details. So let's get started, Lauren.
Well, Diane Francis was last seen by her daughters in Palm Beach, Florida, sometime in June of 2003. She was arrested for trespassing in Jacksonville, Florida on November 27, 2005, and this is the last indication of her whereabouts. Diane was born July 7, 1968 in Somerville, New Jersey, to Rosalie Lamonto and David Leslie Francis Sr. She had two younger brothers, David Leslie Francis Jr. and Michael J. Francis. Diane had a normal, happy childhood until her parents separated when she was about 12 years old. According to her daughter, Sherry, there is some speculation that she may or may not have experienced some physical or sexual abuse as a child, but nothing has ever been confirmed. When her parents divorced, Diane and her brothers moved to Florida with their father. This is when Diane's behavior started to change. Her brothers called their mother once and told her that Diane was sneaking boys into the house in the middle of the night. When she reached high school, she's described as drop-dead gorgeous, and boys were constantly pursuing her. At this point, she began to drift far away from the once normal and well-behaved child she once was. Her father recalls her getting in with the wrong crowd.
At the age of 16, Diane became pregnant. Now, she would later give birth to this baby prematurely in the hospital bathroom, and her baby girl, Stephanie Francis, was born and died on April 11, 1985. Now, there's different accounts of Diane's reaction and behavior after the birth and the death of her first daughter. So some say she never bounced back from it. Others say she was cold and calloused and didn't seem to care. So we all know grief is a funny thing, and you really can't judge anyone who has suffered such a profound loss, especially the age of 16.
Right.
I mean, you're still developing at 16, so hormones are different, your mindset's different. I mean, there's a lot of factors that were against her at this point. Now, the details are unclear, but at some point, Diane moved back to New Jersey either before or after dropping out of high school in the 12th grade.
In the year 1990, Diane met Charles Edward Snyder. A year after they met, their first daughter, Jessica, was born September 22, 1991. On June 15, 1993, they welcomed another daughter, Sherry. According to Charles Snyder, at some point between the two pregnancies, she started doing drugs and partying as well as cheating and not coming home some nights. He even claimed she did drugs while pregnant with Sherry. These claims are not confirmed. They are what was told to Sherry by her father.
The couple would continue to live in New Jersey, moving here and there in order to make ends meet, staying with family members whenever possible. Now, eventually, they would end up in the state of Florida in 1994. Now, Diane said she wanted to be near her father again. This makes sense. It's her father. That's her family. It's her rock. Now, just 1 year after their move to the state of Florida, they ended up in a trailer park where Diane met a man by the name of John Schmidt. She told Charles, "I'm going to marry John, and he's going to be the girl's father now." And so Charles decides he's going to move back to New Jersey, and his daughters never saw him again.
Diane continued down the same path, dating different men, and there was always drugs involved. Her daughters were taken by social services and put into foster care at least 3 times over the next several years. The girls were also shuffled around to other family members, everyone just waiting for Diane to get it together enough to raise them for herself. Unfortunately, that never happened.
Diane met a man by the name of John Taylor Boggs the day he got out of prison in 1997. Now, Boggs served 4 years in prison for burglary, and their relationship was volatile, to say the least. Sherry remembers one night in 1999 when Boggs threw her across the house and then punched a hole through her door, trying to get to her. And Sherry and her sisters began jumping on him, kicking and screaming, trying to help out their mother. But Diane would deny any abuse when the police showed up. She wanted to continue on as if nothing happened so she could keep her place to live, mostly probably for her daughter's sake.
Yeah.
No, but not long after, she lost her daughters again, and at this time, she tried to take her own life. Now, despite the abuse, the drugs, and drama, Diane and John Boggs were very much in love with each other. So Sherry remembers good times they had. Quote, "It wasn't horrible 100% of the time."
In the year 2000, Diane met Roger Allen Foreman Sr. Roger was driving down the road one day and spotted Diane on the side of the road walking. He stopped to speak to her. She said she had just gotten into a huge fight with her crazy boyfriend, John Boggs, and she explained that she did not want to go back to him. That was the beginning of their relationship right then and there, and Roger was good for Diane. Soon she was allowed to see her daughters again, mostly on arranged, supervised visits, and soon after she regained custody of them again. She seemed happy, always joking, almost back to her normal self, but that didn't last. In 2003, Diane lost her daughters for the last time, again for drugs and neglect. Her parental rights were terminated, and her daughters never saw her face to face again. At the time of her disappearance, she was living a transient lifestyle. Although her last arrest was at Jacksonville, she was known to spend time in Southeast Florida. Her most recent addresses were in Melbourne and Palm Bay.
Well, one little incident that we discussed and were sort of dumbfounded on when we covered this case was at some point in 2006. We don't know the exact date. Diane called her father asking for her birth certificate and social security card, which seemed a little bit odd. Now, she asked him to mail the documents to a hotel in Jacksonville, which he did, but when he tried to contact her again, she was gone. So at this point, we know that she was in Jacksonville in 2006, and as far as we know, this is the last time that her family had any contact with her whatsoever. Now, her daughters hired a private investigator to look for her, but he came up with nothing.
So Diane was 37 at the time of her disappearance, but she would be 55 today. Her hair has been described as blonde, brown, or strawberry blonde, and the last time she was seen, it was shoulder length and straight. Her eyes are brown or hazel. She's 5'3" and 100 to 120 pounds. She has a tattoo of a heart on her left calf and a tattoo of the letters JT on her right arm, and her ears are pierced. She has scars on both arms and on her face, and she has a space between her two upper front teeth where the teeth turn away from each other. According to the Charlie Project, she may go by her middle name, Teresa, or use the alias names Diane Teresa Foreman and or Kimberly Teresa Foreman, and used Kimmy or Dee Dee as nicknames. If you have any information about Diane Francis that could help investigators, you're asked to call the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, again, at 561-688-3000.
And like we say, if you know something or know someone that lived in that area, please ask a story. Ask them if they know about any of the cases in Palm Beach County. And you never know what the conversation might bring. You know, we just got back from CrimeCon and we had so much discussion, and then you ask someone a question about something in their hometown, or they're telling you, oh, yeah, well, I heard this story about this, or I heard a story there. So the stories travel, and sometimes those rumors can become tips, and those tips could lead to the arrest or the location of someone that's missing.
All right, everyone, that's it for this episode.
Please remember to check out our website for links to all of our social media, our Patreon, our merch store, and much, much more.
And please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on, and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, thank you all for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark, dark, dark.